It's May 2023 and I'm in Alta, still some 400 kilometres above the Arctic Circle, but 630 kilometres into my 3,000 kilometre overland journey down the length of Norway, from Kirkenes on the Barents to Kristiansand on the southern coast. After an overnight in Alta, it's time to resume the journey south, heading towards the Arctic capital of Tromsø. The first part of the journey taking us out of Alta, past a museum and rock carvings we'd visited the previous afternoon. If the journey from Kirkenes to Hammerfest had been dominated by the fjords and mountains, and the journey from Hammerfest to Alta by the fast-flowing rivers, then the signature for this leg of the journey must be the engineering. Within minutes of leaving Alta, I'd already lost count of the numbers of tunnels that we passed through, as the winding roads further north become more direct. Tunnels through mountains leading directly onto elegant bridges, cutting across rivers and fjords before diving back into tunnels again. Add into the mix 2 ferry crossings in this journey, and this leg helps you to show how Norway has tamed its geography and what billions in oil revenue spent on infrastructure and the good of a nation can achieve. About 90 minutes into the journey, and there's a pit stop at a service station in the village of Burfjord, located at the end of a fjord of the same name. And from here, the first view of the Lyngen Alps, mountains that will dominate the skyline for much of the next section of the journey. Setting off from Burfjord, we continue the journey, though this section is less about the engineering and more about the stunning views of the mountains coming down to meet the fjords, and as the land around us slowly gets greener, before abruptly passing through zones where the snows are still on the ground down to sea level, even in May. And, along the way, always in view, always looming, the outlines of the Lyngen Alps. Two hours after leaving Burfjord, the road rounds a headland as we turn to run alongside the Lyngen Fjord, with the Lyngen Alps fully on show across the waters from us. Around 4 hours after departing Alta, we arrive at Olderdalen, and an obstacle that the Norwegian road engineers have yet to tame, the Fjord. We could continue for another 2 hours following the various arms of the fjord around its edges on a 128-kilometre route. Or we could roll onto the ferry, fully electric, and sail the 12 kilometres straight across the fjord and cut off all that driving. The crossing takes 45 minutes, which conveniently matches up with the driver's next break time, so everyone piles off the bus to sit in the passenger saloon on the ferry, which conveniently has a cafe for catching up with that missed lunch. As the ferry starts to pull into the Lyngsidet on the opposite side of the fjord, we all reboard the bus, ready to disembark. It's a short 20-minute drive round behind the Lyngen Alps to the second ferry of the day, the 6-kilometre crossing of the Ulvsfjorden from Svensby to Bjerkvik. As this crossing is quite short, there's no need to disembark the bus, and instead we remained on board for 20 minutes or so at sea before rolling off the ferry, the Lyngen Alps now behind us, and on to the final 45-minute journey across into Tromsø. Final arrival into Tromsø, as always being signified by the majestic Arctic cathedral, the stunning Tromsøbrua. Tromsø is a city I've visited on a number of occasions, and you can find out more about the Paris for North in 2022's journey north through Scandinavia that ended here. Click the link in the top right to view that video. That journey also featured the bus from Narvik north to Tromsø on the top deck of a double-decker coach in significantly better weather than we'd had this time round. Departure from Tromsø is once again across the Tromsøbrua into a very heavy shower. A brief break in the weather coincided with a rest stop in Buktamoen. Before the lashing rain returned as we first climbed into the mountains and then descended down for waters of Barents arm of the Efjord and our final approach into Narvik. With that, the stunning entrance into the city via the Helgelandsbrua and its connecting tunnel. Narvik was, temporarily, bathed in sun as we took a lunch break in the city between our confusing connections. After travelling down from Tromsø on the number 100 bus, our connection to Storjord was on the number 100 bus, where we'd have a 4-minute connection to change onto, you've guessed it, the number 100 bus, on down to Bodø. Our journey out of Narvik not getting off to the best start when we ground to a halt for 5 minutes waiting for an iron ore train to cross in front of us into the harbour. "70 minutes after departing Narvik, and back on time thanks to some pretty impressive timetable padding, we reached the Efjord bridges, a series of 3 bridges crossing the Efjord, taking advantage of 2 islands to create a very picturesque crossing, even in lashing rain. "25 minutes further on and we reach the ferry terminal at Skarberget for the start of one of the most synchronised connections I've ever experienced. 45 minutes earlier and 23 kilometres to the northwest of us, our connecting number 100 bus had driven onto the ferry at Lønningen to set sail for 65 minutes to Bognes. We roll onto the Fjord 1 ferry on time for our own 20-minute crossing to Bognes. The sailing is across the Tisfjorden and forms a vital part of the E6 main north-south road in Norway, with 2 boats shuttling back and forth to keep the traffic moving. We dock in Bognes and start to disembark just as the ferry from Lønningen, conveying our connection, is docking itself. We roll off the ferry and head out of the port, safely a couple of minutes ahead of our connecting bus. Our bus continues along the road for another few minutes before pulling into a rest stop in Storjord, where we waited for a couple of minutes for the other 100 to join us, pulling in directly opposite our bus, so it was a very quick transfer of luggage from one hold to the other, and then after boarding, a quick departure on our way, almost as though they do this twice a day, every day, in both directions. Falsk, we part ways with the E6 that we've been travelling on almost constantly since Kirkenes to turn west and run out along the Bodø Peninsula to our destination, spending some of the time following alongside the railway tracks of the Nordlandsbanen that we'll be leaving Bodø on in a couple of days' time. The weather really deteriorated as we crossed the Tvelandsbø, and for a while it was hard to remember that we're in midnight sun, as it certainly felt like night had fallen. The following morning, the worst weather had passed over, so it was possible to explore the city without having to dive for cover too often. Bodø has a history stretching back around 10,000 years, when settlements sprung up around the peninsula, taking advantage of good fishing opportunities, though at that time what makes up the modern centre of Bodø was below sea level, as the sea was around 80 metres higher than it is today, the land rebounding from Ice Age glaciers retreating, pushing the modern centre of Bodø above the waves to eventually be settled. The city of Bodø was founded on the 20th of May 1816 as a trading town for northern Norwegian fishermen, rather than having to travel all the way down to Bergen, a move that was fiercely opposed by the traders down in Bergen, who wanted to keep their near monopoly on the trade of food and fish with the rest of the world. Bergen ultimately prevailed, and 8 years after the founding of Bodø, the city had a population of just 210. The history of that fish trade from the Lofoten Islands, navigating by experience, sight, and even the different sounds that the water makes against the boat as it passes over the various reefs and inlets down the 1,000 kilometres of the Norwegian coast, is told in the Jektefartsmuseet, located on the southern end of the peninsula. The main exhibition is centred around the Anna Carolina, a Nordic yacht or jekta that was built in 1876 and is one of the last surviving examples of this crucial type of vessel that helps support the communities of the north. For centuries, these wooden boats had ferried the dried stockfish for the Lofoten Islands south to Bergen to trade, and then returned with the flour, grain and other goods that those living in the north required. Along with the Anna Carolina, the museum also charts the history of the region and the development of the city. The city's fortunes took a dramatic turn in 1864 when winter herring started to swim into the sea areas around the city in vast numbers, and the newly opened fisheries created a boom in the town for around 20 years. Bodø wasn't a main target for the invading Nazis in April 1940, but less than 2 months later the Luftwaffe targeted the city with a bombing campaign that reduced it to ruins in a matter of hours, returning the following day to finish off what had been left standing. The Nazis set up forced and slave labour camps around the city to use prisoners of war to create fish distribution facilities, taking advantage of the sea's bounty. Unlike towns further north, the city remained occupied until the Nazis' surrender on the 8th of May. The bell tower of the cathedral contains a memorial to Bodø's fallen, to those from Bodø who gave their lives for Norway during war and occupation, 1940 to 1945. No one mentioned, no one forgotten. Bodø Church was, along with the rest of the city, destroyed in the bombing of the 27th of May 1940. Following a competition to design a new church in 1946, the foundation stone was laid in 1954, and the new church was consecrated on the 14th of October 1956. In the interim, a new diocese of Sør-Helgeland had been established, so the newly consecrated church was immediately promoted to cathedral. Bodø received a further boost 5 years later in 1961, when, 80 years after the first section between Trondheim and Hell had opened, the Nordlandsbanen eventually made it to the city, connecting Bodø to the Norwegian rail network. Today, the 1960 station marks the start of the next leg of our journey south. Next morning, and on time at 12:27, we depart Bodø for 9 3/4 hour, 729-kilometre journey south. the first 40 minutes of the journey, we retrace our steps back east along the Bodø Peninsula, at times running alongside the road we'd come in on 2 days previously, though this time in much drier weather, until we reach the town of Fusk, where the train turns south and starts to rapidly munch away those kilometres. Whilst there are only 2 passenger trains a day making the full journey, 1 day train and 1 sleeper, and just a handful of other local trains serving the area between Bodø and Fusk, the line is an important freight route, and on several occasions we paused in passing loops to let other trains pass. An hour and 3/4 after leaving Bodø, we depart Lonsdal Station for a very important part of the journey. With the scenery becoming suitably wintry and the slight climb into the low hills, we traverse the Arctic Circle and, after 8 days, head back into a land that has sunsets.
Så lenge passerer vi Polarsirkelen. Polarsirkelen er markert med en steinpyramide på hver side av sporet. We are soon passing the Arctic Circle. The Arctic Circle is marked with stone pyramids on each side of the track.
About 30 minutes later we arrive at Dunderland, and here we meet the northbound train that set off from Trondheim about 7.5 hours ago. From Dunderland we draw close to the Rana River, which will now follow for the rest of its journey south to the town of Mo i Rana and the Rana Fjord. From Mo i Rana, it's another 6.5 hours south on this train to Trondheim, but this represents an important point in our journey, as we're now 1,700 kilometres down, with just 1,300 kilometres to go. Next time, I complete my journey south down the length of Norway, stopping off to explore the Munkholmen off the coast of Trondheim, and its brother the Christiansholm in Kristiansand.